Team Fortress 2 is a fantastic piece of gaming history. It's one of the greatest games Valve has ever made, and it's one of the most enduring online multiplayer games of all time, with a sizable player base even after 12 years and plenty of competitors who came and went. There's something here for everyone to enjoy: a timeless Pixar-like art style, fast-paced chaotic gameplay, a ludicrous degree of player customization, the lack of a price tag, and especially the characters.
Hit shot.
And we're not just talking about Mann Co's proud batch of mercenaries. TF2's lore is deceptively rich with characters that span the full moral compass. A few are good, but most are pretty bad, and some would take evil as a compliment. We left no stone unturned with this one, looking at the game itself, along with the Meet the Team videos and the official TF2 comics, so we could be as thorough as possible. Equip your favorite hat and grab a sandwich, because the mission begins in 10 seconds. I'm Brad with One Up Binge, and this is Team Fortress 2 characters, good to evil. Starting off on the relatively good side, we've got Conager, otherwise known as the Engineer. Let's be real, the bar has been set very low when the best character is a paid mercenary who has no qualms with murder, but NG does show far more mental stability, humility, and kindness than his peers.
I'm an engineer. That means I solve problems.
This is probably best shown by his domination lines on other classes. The other mercs are very clearly trying to be hurtful and biting with their words, and while Engineer isn't incapable of this, his quotes are overall much more subdued and cheeky than actively malicious.
You are a whole herd of ugly.
We also can't ignore that his role within the team is to protect and assist his team with territory-defending sentry guns, health and ammo replenishing dispensers, and the time-saving teleporters.
Teleporter coming right up!
Not only are they vital assets to any game, but they make NG the ultimate team player, which we always appreciate. Besides the love of violence, NG's most questionable trait is his love for technology. That borders on mad scientist at times. It's heavily implied he voluntarily cut off his own hand, just to replace it with a robotic one, and he's even worked together with Medic on experiments.
Y'all ready? Ready!
Some like determining the effects of using the teleporters is perfectly rational and harmless.
We all have 3 days to live.
Others like giving a pumpkin sentience by taking the brain of a random guy is anything but. Still, Dell's the best kind of guy in a crap sack world like this.
You best hope. Not pointed at you.
Next up is Tavish Finnegan de Groot, the one and only Demo Man. On a list of fictional characters absolutely addicted to alcohol, Demo would rank pretty high up there. The man went into a delusional coma just from being given normal food and water, after 10 straight years of running on whiskey and aspirin. The man has a real problem, and that's why he can be such a mess on the battlefield. When he's not shouting at the top of his lungs at whoever he just decapitated, he's probably muttering incoherent nonsense as he lays down his next sticky trap.
They're going to have to glue you back together.
With all that said, when he's not drunk, Demo is arguably one of the more sensible and nice members of the team.
I'm a black Scottish Cyclops.
This is best shown in the War comic, where Demo spends his time off his 3 jobs taking care of his elderly blind mother, who can get very catty with him, while letting every negative comment roll off his shoulders. He also initially refuses to kill the enemy team soldier, who was his best friend at the time, for new weapons, and only gives in with lies from his Pauling and a haunted sword. Really, Demo seems like the perfect guy to go out with for a beer. Just make sure to leave the building after the first drink, because that bar won't be there for long. Alright guys, Mr. Mundy is up next, but you can just call him the Sniper, probably the most level-headed member of the team, next to Engineer. The Sniper is a professional at heart. And what does being a professional entail exactly? Be polite, be efficient, and have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Sniper is the textbook definition of workplace professionalism. Around his own teammates, Sniper is a chipper, friendly guy. Around his enemy, he becomes a cold and ruthless killer. He makes it clear that real snipers don't monologue and take time to draw out a target's suffering. They just take the shot and move on.
Professionals have standards.
And while plenty of snipers taunt after a kill, they only do it after the kill, so he's not technically wrong. Barring his use of Girardi, nothing about Sniper stands out as particularly awful. And honestly, his decent behavior in battle is a lot more respectable when you realize he was abandoned by his own parents, and his foster parents didn't approve of his career.
Dad, Put them on a phone.
He could easily let his pent-up anger out on the battlefield, but, you know, workplace professionalism and all that. Next up is the fastest merc of Twofort, Jeremy the Scout. At first glance, Scout seems to be the living manifestation of the stereotypical overcooked millennial. He's smug, constantly in your face, can't bother with manners, and acts like he's God's gift to the planet Earth, which is debatable at this point.
Yo, what's up? Do you have any idea who I am?
But unlike some of his cohorts, it's easy to write off Scott's malice as a mask he hides behind in battle. Sure, he's got no problem flexing for the camera, but Scout is surprisingly chill off the battlefield. He's talkative but very personable and really good with kids. He's infatuated with Miss Pauling and genuinely seeks to impress her, and even turns down other women because he's saving himself for her.
Why don't we discuss it over dinner?
And if expiration date is anything to go by, his arrogance is more of a tool he uses to cover his insecurities, and he'll willingly expose this just to get Spy's help.
You are better than me, all right? I need your help.
He also may or may not be God's literal gift to Earth, depending on if you think his trip to heaven was an injury-induced dream or an actual encounter he had after his death, which led to his resurrection. It's hard to determine, but even without that particular detail, Scott's a nice guy. He just happens to be a guy who likes hurting people.
Brother, I hurt people. Boink!
Finally, we get to the big man himself, the face of TFT, Mikhail, aka the heavy weapons guy.
I am heavy weapons guy.
Considering his massive, gruff exterior and unconditional love for his favorite minigun, Sasha, you'd be forgiven for thinking the most depth this guy has is in his accent.
Who touched my gun?
And sure, Heavy's dialogue in-game is pretty one-note.
I've yet to meet one that can outsmart Bullet.
He's a brute, he knows it, and he'll make the whole enemy team aware of it as he mows them down one after another, while his maniacal laughter echoes throughout the Badlands. Take a look at the other material, however, and Heavy becomes one of the game's most endearing characters. His father was a counter-revolutionary, and once he was killed, Mikhail, along with his mother and sisters, were in prison at the Gulag. He would eventually escape with his family and spent a good part of his life protecting them, while they were all on the run from the government. He eventually sold his skills in bulk as a mercenary to support his family, and the rest is history. He's shown to be surprisingly smart and perceptive when outside of combat, and if his guest appearance in Poker Night at the inventory is taken into account, the man even has a PhD in Russian literature. He's shown to be fiercely loyal to his comrades, going full berserker when his classic counterpart kills Medic. And then there's End of the Line, which was a community-made video officially endorsed by Valve that features the Red Heavy intending to stop a train with his bare hands to prevent it from blowing up his team's base and all the innocents surrounding them with no help, and succeeding with some help from Medic. And while we don't know the exact reason he did it, we can say for certain that it was heroic and undeniably awesome. It's easy to like a family man like Heavy, and the hardships and responsibilities he endures are far more demanding than most of his team. But he's just a bit too trigger-happy with Sasha to put him any higher. The Pyro was easily the biggest wildcard for this list. We don't know anything about this guy. Heck, we don't even know if he is a guy. Actually, we don't even know if they're human. What we do know is that they love fire, and that they see everything in the context of Pyroland. Enemies are sweet little cherubs. Their flamethrower is a bubble machine, and their slow, deliberate Terminator-style march toward annihilation is a bubbly strut to look more fun. It's as disturbing as it is hilarious. So how do you rank something that genuinely believes they spread joy wherever they go? It was a hard decision because Pyro's showcase of insanity puts even the likes of the Joker to shame. Ultimately, we decided to go easy on Pyro. Their bloodlust in the real world is hard to match, but outside of battle, Pyro is typically pretty easy to rein in. They're very childlike and are typically just minding their own business or idly flicking a lighter on the sidelines. Hardly an issue. Pyro just wants to spread their happiness with others, and we can appreciate that, so long as it's on the other side of the map. Taking a break from the playable roster, we arrive at a slew of the better side characters, starting with Miss Pauling. It feels wrong putting the administrator's right-hand woman at a somewhat respectable spot like this, but Miss Pauling is so blatantly earnest and giddy about her job if her various interactions with the cast are anything to go by.
Looks like I will be burying bodies all weekend.
And it becomes hard to remember that she's directly serving under such a horrible person. She often acts as the straight man to most of the team members and is capable of keeping them in check, which is impressive considering some of the mercs we just discussed.
What the hell is that?
She does seem to have no personal qualms with letting the mercs relax, have fun, and even becoming friends with the enemy. It just so happens that her boss, who also happens to be one of the most powerful individuals in TF2, doesn't see eye to eye with her.
Get it back, and the administrator never has to know.
And for her sake, it's good that she's willing to go along with her various plans and schemes. That said, she does take a disturbing amount of pride in her faith in the administrator and has no real issue with murder and body disposal, to the point where she's an expert on digging shallow graves with no trace. But hey, I guess the pay's probably worth the dirty work. Gray Man's robot army is another strange case to rank. Obedient robots with established programming and no room for free will are about as neutral as one can get. But these robotic doppelgangers also serve under one of Team Fortress's more evil characters. But then again, they're not really attacking some pure-hearted group of angels either. They're programmed to attack all things Mann Co. And boy howdy do they know how to do it, sending wave after wave of bomb-carrying robots along with the occasional sentry buster or tank in an attempt to break the team's ranks and destroy whatever Mann Co facility that's under siege. They've certainly been the bane of the man versus machine community, time and time again, considering some of the ridiculous missions this mode can put in front of you. But again, this is all programmed malice, far from true evil. Gray robots are in a morally gray area themselves. Go figure. Coming in next is Mann Co's loud and proud CEO, Saxton Hale.
You can smell fear.
With his absurd physical strength, Australia-shaped chest hair, and affinity for yelling and violence,
That was the whole money, boy!
Saxton is TF2's answer for mimetic badasses like Captain Falcon or Chuck Norris. Hell, he even has his own list of Chuck Norris-esque achievements and facts. Taking away all the testosterone, Saxton's an all-around decent guy and semi-respectable CEO whose greatest flaws lie within his greatest passions. He loves fighting and adventuring, but that's resulted in the countless deaths of all manner of wildlife, probably the most famous being when he caused the extinction of Yetis, when he punched the final one so hard it exploded.
Yeah, I killed it. Nah, this time it exploded.
But there was also the one time he had an issue of his comic written entirely in gorilla blood, where its 17 million copy print run left only 5 gorillas left on the planet. Oops. At the same time, he does have some set standards, which would mean a lot coming from someone like Hale.
Don't worry, son. Stick with me.
He'll allow a company takeover if the rival CEO can beat him in unarmed combat. But when the CEO of Grey Gravel turned out to be a little girl, Saxton willingly stepped down from Mann Co and its ludicrous profits because he couldn't go through with beating up a child. It's a weirdly sad scene to watch someone so punch-happy walk away without a fight. Next up are the Bickering Twins and CEOs of Red and Blue, Redman and Blue Tarch Man. While these two have never done anything conceivably good, they're also just a bit too idiotic and incompetent to rank any closer to the evil end. These two were left the practically worthless gravel pits in their father's will, but both were so delusional and so determined to one-up the other that they convinced themselves that this land had purpose and hired mercenary teams to fight for conquest. They wasted their whole lives fighting over gravel. That's it. Even when they get killed off by their third brother, Gray Man, they end up coming back and fighting again as Ghost because they couldn't determine who died first. This went as far as to have a Halloween map where the teams have to race to push the opposing team's brother to hell first, which does at least exhibit their most deliberately evil traits. Either the losing brother will take the winning team to hell as an act of revenge, aka being a pretty sore loser, or the winning brother will take their own team to hell so he doesn't have to pay them for the job. Admittedly, it's hard to tell which is worse. Let's just leave these two to their bickering and move on to some other characters. Quickly revisiting the playable roster, we have the Spy.
Right behind you.
It's pretty easy to hate the Spy both in and out of game. Not only are his weapons and skills the most antagonistic between crippling buildings with sappers, disguising as opposing players, and insta-killing poor souls with backstabs, but he's also a massive jerk to everyone around him.
You want to be my lover? Earn it.
Seduce me!
He believes he's way more sane and classy than his associates, which might be true, but their domination lines are also a lot less personal than some of the despicable stuff he said.
I've merely finished what your liver started.
He also keeps himself distant from virtually everyone on his own team, to the point of having his own isolated smoking room in the base. That said, he's not the worst member on the team. When everyone thought they only had 3 days to live, he takes the initiative in creating a bucket list so that he can help his teammates fulfill their last wishes. Despite being portrayed as a sleazy womanizer, which is certainly debatable, he does genuinely love Scout's mother, and in Old Wounds, it's revealed that yes, he is Scout's biological father, and that for all his surface-level insults, he truly is proud of his son. Granted, he had to disguise himself as Tom Jones just to tell him that, but hey, that was still probably a big step for him. Alright, up next are Marasmus' summable minions, the Headless Horseless Horseman, Monoculus, and the Abominomicon. Very similar to Gray's robots, it's debatable just how evil these guys are, since they're all under the command of an evil wizard. That said, they're sentient beings, unlike the robots, and they clearly enjoy wreaking some havoc during Scream Fortress, where they jump into the fray eager to kill. Be it decapitating players in a terrifying game of tag, or blowing both teams up to Kingdom Come with a hail of explosives. Not far off from his underlings is Merasmus himself, finally arriving at a character who actually admits they're evil. Merasmus is a self-proclaimed, all-powerful evil wizard. While his actual skills and competency fluctuate, he's most certainly evil. Sure, he can be quite silly and over the top, and a lot of the misfortune brought on him, usually by his old roommate Soldier, is hardly his fault. But when he gets mad, he becomes an absolutely devastating force of nature, with magic potent enough to destroy a group of players in a single spell, to the point where the game forces both teams to work together to take him down. Besides that, he's constantly striking up deals with the Mafia and Yakuza so he can pay for demonic artifacts, holds the leash to 3 exceptionally strong creatures that he makes liberal use of, and will come back no matter how many times you kill him. Despite all this, he doesn't really have the same grand evil ambitions that the other antagonists have, and it isn't acknowledged to be some big threat by a majority of the cast, so we couldn't justify ranking him any higher. Right next to Marasmus is his arch-enemy and old roommate, Doe the Soldier. We'll get this fact out straight away. With the exception of Pyro, Soldier is easily the most mentally insane of the team.
We killed everybody and took a briefcase.
When he got rejected by every branch of the US military during World War II, he paid his own ticket to Europe and went on a Nazi killing spree, and also after the war ended. He's the only one in the group who continued to ingest 2 Fort's lead poison water supply, even after Paulie started shipping them fresh bottled water, and he's perfectly content with using his own rockets to take massive leaps through the air, no matter the damage. And unlike Demo, he doesn't have the excuse of just being drunk. But where Pyro is usually just unknowingly violent in the battlefield without much baggage elsewhere, Soldier is much more intentionally malicious. He's a loudmouth to both his comrades and his opponents.
We cannot teleport bread anymore!
He arguably gets the team into trouble more so than anyone else, mainly thanks to his ongoing feud with Marasmus, along with that time he teleported mutated bread for 3 days straight.
I have done nothing but teleport bread for 3 days.
He's exceptionally brutal to anyone he deems a threat. He once gave a rousing speech about Sun Tzu to a bunch of decapitated heads of his enemies, and gifted his fiancée a necklace of ears, and that probably doesn't even cover a quarter of the bad stuff he's done. With all that, Solly does have a few bright spots. Being patriotic and proud of your country is hardly a bad thing on its own, even if he takes it way too far. And for as kill crazy as he is, the Blue Soldier did form a genuine friendship with the Red Team's Demo Man and refused to kill him, even when offered new weapons and threatened with death. Still, Soldier's a pretty bad guy, all things considered.
He's a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
Rounding out the last of the Team Fortress team is the local healer and esteemed mutilator, Dr. Ludwig, the medic. Probably one of the most famous healers in all of gaming, specifically because of how subversive he is.
That's how I lost my medical license.
Where other healers and white mages are pure-hearted, kind to everyone, and have a strong distaste for violence, the medic only enjoys the healing because it's a side effect of all the horrific body horror and gore he gets to take part in.
Let's go practice medicine.
To say the medic has no ethical standards during surgery would be a massive understatement. He's replaced plenty of both the TF2 team and their classic counterparts' organs with organs from various exotic animals, as they're more capable withstanding the pressure his experimentation puts them under, and more often than not, it's done in his Frankenstein's laboratory filled with loose doves, blood everywhere, no proper medical wear or even gloves, and no actual anesthesia.
Ribs grow back?
No, they don't.
Sure, his Medigun is one of the most impressive pieces of equipment in all of TF2, as it's capable of curing and fixing all sorts of wounds in a matter of seconds, and is capable of granting invincibility or even resurrecting dead teammates. But he only uses it so he can keep his team of test subjects alive. And despite being completely insane, he's got one devilish silver tongue. You've got to be one charming fast talker to convince a group of people to let you play God with their bodies.
Archimedes! No!
It's filthy in there.
And in The Naked and the Dead, it's revealed he had sold his soul to the devil and was able to scam him into coming back from the dead because he had sewn the other 8 souls of his teammates to himself, meaning the devil didn't own the majority of his soul. Yeah, the medic outplayed the devil. Awesome? Yeah. Evil? Most certainly. Sure, he does refer to his teammates as his friends, and is probably one of the most charming and likable of the group, but I don't think I'd ever let myself be in the same room alone with this nutjob. Zephaniah Man is far from the most evil character in the game in terms of personal wrongs, but he deserves a lot of credit for his impact on the bigger picture of Team Fortress. He was the original CEO of Mann Co and owner of most of the land we fight over in the games. In his will, he left his personal estate in Australium to his maid, to his tracker, Mann Co, and to his 2 bumbling sons. He bought half the worthless land because he knew the 2 would squabble about and not do anything actually productive. Yeah, practically all the events that follow both in and out of game can all be traced back to his decisions. And where are we now? A munitions company run by a mass killer and species destroyer. 2 sons that hire teams of crazed gunmen that spiraled way out of control. And the administrator? Well, we'll get to that piece later. Between all that, him constantly berating Redmond and Blue Tarch even from beyond the grave, and the little fact he tried to have his 3rd infant son killed for being smaller and sicker than the other 2. Zephaniah is just completely unlikable. From father to son, we come to Gray Man. The first of our big bads across TF2, Gray was long presumed dead after he was stolen by an eagle back when he was a frail but highly intelligent newborn. However, he ended up being raised by that eagle, which he repaid by killing and eating it, and it's young. Off to a good start if you couldn't tell. Believing that he was the rightful owner of his father's birthright and angered at his father, not even wanting to give him a chance at birth, Zephaniah built his own empire from the ground up in order to usurp Mann Co from Saxton, and attempts to snuff out the administrator and Miss Pauling by creating a massive obedient robot army, forcibly disbanding the TF2 team, and even hiring the Team Fortress Classic Squad to do his dirty work. He's a super genius and strategist, nearly on the level as the administrator, and the only thing that does him in is when Classic Heavy double-crosses him. Still, he at least died as the favorite son of Zephaniah. Enjoyed the consolation prize, you withered old husk. Moving on to the Team Fortress Classic team. You ever wonder what happened to the OG mercenaries that created the groundwork for TF2 to thrive on? Well, they're still a team, and they're only interested in working for pay, something that Gray could certainly supply. On the surface, they don't seem that much different from their modern counterparts, but a little bit more time with them shows that they're far worse. Classic Sniper enjoys drawing out his skills with body shots, so he can enjoy their suffering, a far cry from the TF2 Sniper. Classic Pyro is probably more sadistic than anyone else in the series, when she tortures Soldier by drilling into his teeth even after he's mistakenly given her information. A long shot from the Pyro who's so delusional that they don't even recognize what they're doing. Classic Soldier and Scout apparently had backup plans involving an orphanage for an endless supply of free kids. Not even worth analyzing that further. Not even gonna go there. As the leader, we'll give Classic Heavy credit for actually caring for his comrades in a way that we don't really see amongst the modern roster. But he's also backstabbed his employer, killed a modern medic in cold blood, and came close to taking everyone down when he became powered up and immortal by Australium. Still, once the modern team got some momentum, thanks to their various surprises, they were mostly quick to fall. And as the ultimate evil of the Team Fortress universe, we're giving the honor to the Administrator. While both Gray and the Classic team have both certainly proven that they're capable threats and have successfully stolen the villain spotlight for a time, even they can't match her sheer skill and nastiness. To the point where even Gray admits that whatever she's got planned is worse than anything he could come up with. And it's true, her undisclosed plans with Australium were so unspeakably awful that it left the entire US Senate in stunned, horrified silence. After she was left Zephaniah's estate and the massive supply of Australium that came with, she became a different person, one fueled by a lust for power, immortality, and carnage. She's perfectly content to play into Red and Blue's ongoing feud by being the announcer and owner for both teams. She knows how to keep them in line, with either threats on their lives or simply offering new weapons. She despises the very concept of things like friendship, and she's so invested in her work that she only gives herself 1 hour off a year, where she makes pigeons fight each other in the park for crumbs. It's very telling that in a world full of hulked out Australians and skilled murderers, this frail elderly lady is still firmly on top of all of them, and we're looking forward to how she spends her final few hours of life, whenever that happens. That's our ranking. Disagree with us? Let us know in the comments. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality spectrum of your favorite games. But most importantly, stay wicked.